an incredibly important guitar was listed on Reverb. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It's the Ace Frehley prototype #1 from 1996. And what's even crazier is it's being offered by the man who built it for Gibson, T.C. Harrison. So there she is in all of her glory. Now, for the average viewer, you might not understand just how historically significant this guitar is. So allow me to paint the story. The Gibson Custom Shop first opens in late 1993. They don't start making signature versions of already signature guitars, the Les Paul, until the mid to late 90s. We're talking things like Slash's Snake Pit, the Ace Frehley 300. You've got the Joe Perry model, as well as the Gibson USA Jimmy Page models. A few years later, you start to get the SGs with the Tony Iommis and the Angus Youngs. And then the early 2000s, you get the Flying Vs with the Lenny Kravitz and the Hendrix Love Drops. So normally, having a #1 or a signed prototype is pretty cool. That gets amplified when it's a historically significant guitar like the Frehley 300. Because not only is that the first time the Spaceman received his signature Gibson guitar from Gibson, but it's also tied into that very early days of the Gibson Custom Shop. There's more than one market that would love and appreciate this. And Gibson made tons of these things in many different runs and variations since then, but you can check that out in my Ace Frehley tribute video in this episode if you need to learn more about that. But this is such a hugely historical time in Gibson's history. You're talking about Bruce Kunkel and T.C. Harrison working together on the Snake Pits and doing all these other fancy art guitars here. It is the birth of essentially modern day Gibson, the format that they are still utilizing yet today. So for #1 to be for sale by the guy who built it, that's kind of a big deal. And if you want to amplify that even more, #1 has differences that none of these others have. For example, compare your two headstocks here. You can see on the production one, they had not quite figured out how exactly they were going to do it. Most notably, you're missing the eye right here. And if you look down here on the truss rod cover, you can see that the heart is filled in, and you've got a black lining around the card and Ace as well as on the Les Paul logo. Whereas on the production ones, they decided not to do the colorations. It was too expensive or whatnot. They just left it engraved. Now, whether you like it without the eye or with, I'll let you decide. The other difference between what you're seeing here on the screen is this was done by CNC versus being done by hand. But also, look down here at your inlays. You'll see that the first lightning bolts in our fretboard are actually a little bit smaller as compared to what was later used in the production run. So as a collector, what's important to know is whenever there's a difference on a prototype, rather than it being, the one that they stamped, they just made a prototype to say, yeah, we made a prototype. That's what gets people excited. The next thing that'll drive interest is a story. And let's just say, this guitar has a fantastic story. So first, the 300 run is well known for being plagued with not all of them have the advertised pickups. But in kind of a funny turn of events, the prototype, according to T.C. Harrison, was actually built with leftover new old stock Tim Shaw PAF double creams. And 2 of those are actually still in the guitar yet today. But this guitar was designed by both him and Ace starting in 1996. But Ace played this guitar at the Anaheim NAMM show in January of 1997, and it's at that point in time when he takes this prototype on a Japanese tour. And when it returns to Gibson, that's when the DiMarzio pickups became available to Gibson to use. So that's when the super distortion gets added. Now, if I understand Ace properly, he never really used the neck or middle positions. They're just there for show. So it makes complete sense that they would only put it in the bridge. It's just kind of funny that this one still retains the Tim Shaw PAFs. However, it was actually initially spec'd out with golden hardware, but Ace did not like that. He thought it was ugly, so they swapped it out into chrome. I think it would have been cool if this still had the gold, but you gotta remember, it's a prototype. They were working through it, but there were initially planned to be 3 of these prototypes. However, TC did such a great job, they only needed to make 2. So initially, he was going to get to keep #3, but since it never ended up happening, Gibson gifted him #1, and he's had it all these years since. He describes himself as a huge Ace fan, and he was super happy to be the guy behind this project. And he's held on to it ever since, occasionally getting some offers here and there, but never taking it seriously to sell until just recently. He figured with Ace's passing, it's time for him to share his story and the guitar. And let's face it, Ace memorabilia is at an all-time high right now. People are nostalgic, but what makes this one even cooler is the fact that we have this stuff. a blue binder that says Ace Frehley. You've got prototype headstock veneers. You can see the first iteration right here, and then some sort of an other one. Now, personally, I would like to see that get used on something because I can see why it didn't happen. That's a lot more inlay work that he would have had to have done, and production costs just would have been sky high. But it's cool to see what was potentially being planned. And you can also see the original photos over here, or copies of, that are now iconic, being shared on the Ace Frehley Les Paul website of him back in his younger years holding the guitar. And you can see the check in and out pages, backing up his story that, yeah, he did take this out on tour to inspect, etc. And you've got dates over here, signed off to Kiss. You even have the story documented in Ace's handwriting that, hey, we need the red in this, at least for the prototype. Signed Smokin' Ace. And this was such an iconic guitar, even I had to throw my hat in the ring to document it. He shared a few additional pages and photos with me. I found this fax copy particularly fascinating, dating to October 23rd, 1996, when they bought all the DiMarzio pickups, and they're allowing them to use in Gibson guitar production. He even has the FedEx label of Ace returning this to Gibson back in '97 in January. And here's the early days of the little Saturn from the back plate. Didn't quite like how they were turning out, but then bam, it stands out even yet today. That is the one to use. But I know what you're thinking. You want to add this to your collection? How much is it? It's $125,000. Is that anywhere near close to the market? Or is there too much sentimental value attached within that? Just look at the market on what people are asking for other Ace Frehley guitars right now. It's most pertinent to compare it to an actual The 300. This one's been on the market for a long time at $16,000. I think it's just too beat up. People don't necessarily want to pay that. But then here's another one. Somebody's asking $25,000. It's not uncommon for such a historically significant prototype to fetch anywhere between 5 and 10 times what a regular one could go for. So even if you assume a clean one's even worth 15, you also have to look at other Ace-owned guitars because this is kind of owned by him, but not really. Like, it was used. It's the first one built for him. It was briefly used on a tour. I think it should be priced similarly, but you've got these other guys asking like $50,000 for signed ones or $60,000 for one that Ace previously owned from a slightly different run with the other inlays. In my chats with TC, I actually suggested you should probably take this to an auction house. I don't care if it's heritage or where. I think the two rich guys fighting over this, it probably had the opportunity to sell for even twice that amount. You just have to get two people excited about it, and then FOMO will kick in. As far as a Reverb listing, I think it was an okay place to start, but I think at the end of the day, he was just fishing, seeing what offers might be available. And oh, it's gone. But that was not the only thing TC listed. He also had this on his Reverb shop about a week later. If you look on the edge, you might know what this could be. It's the guitar I missed in my Ace Frehley tribute episode. The Sparkle 3 pickup Les Paul Custom. Ace had at least one of these made, and it captured the hearts of so many people that there's been many replicas and refinished jobs done to other Ace guitars in order to mimic this really cool piece. And TC is still an active luthier, so when you're looking at other guys asking $25,000 for one that's already refinished, no, just hit up TC. I'm sure he can do it for a lot less. In fact, I'm happy to say I saved a viewer via a private help session. He was actually considering paying that price, but I told him, I think you should check this one out instead. And he ended up taking my advice to buy it because even though this one doesn't say Gibson on the headstock, it's got a unique story. This started life as a Gibson, but was reworked by TC as a prototype to be pitched to Gibson as a new signature model for Ace. So we almost had the blue Sparkle Les Paul Custom, except for maybe the back wasn't even going to have the custom binding, which is unique, now that I'm realizing that for the first time. And in 50 years, what are people going to want? Do they want the refinished one, or do they want a prototype built by the same guy who did the initial 300s? I think I steered the viewer in the right direction, as it even comes with a cool COA and some photos showing how he actually cut out the hair with mother of pearl this time. But another thing to consider was the price. This one was listed for $15,000. I thought that was a bit high. I told him what I thought would be fair for this piece. TC also agreed, so they made a deal on that. So whether or not we ever see this guitar come into production, production? Only time will tell. I really think we'll have more Ace models in the future. Because I've heard rumors that the 3-pickup black Les Paul was actually going to be a real thing. So we'll have to see if that ends up happening, but that was not the only Ace Frehley prototype he built. You can see the black one over here, as well as our next one that we're going to talk about, his Deluxe. This one also popped up in TC's Reverb shop recently, based on the original coloration of his Deluxe that was routed out for the double cream pickups. But note the headstock again. There's so many guys that say they still have a star sticker on their headstock because of Ace, and this one incorporates that with the sterling silver hair this time. And hear me out. I think the world is ready for the Gibson logo to go away, and for Gibson to pay tribute to him, do an Ace Frehley headstock. Now I know what you're thinking, that's absolutely blasphemous. Gibson would never do such a thing. That's why people pay such premiums, is for the logo. It's happened before, back in 2009 for BB King. I think that would be a beautiful tribute to do something like this again. From a collector standpoint, I've always found that particular Lucille to be attractive because of that weird anomaly. And since I've seen it here, I think it could work. But also look closely, it looks like the binding for the headstock is made out of maple. Or maybe he just exposed like a maple head cap veneer, I'm not sure. Looking at this build, I'm not sure if he did the pancake body or not, I can't quite tell. But it seems we got the ABR1 bridge, even the slightly off-center burst job. I'm not sure if that's how his original one was or if it just got a little heavy on that side. But this was another fun tribute that was also presented to Gibson as a potential prototype. You even got the nice burst job on the back. You can just barely tell in this photo, and it's got the whole Ace Frehley etchings on the back. And also, pay attention, we still have the volute. And this one was Ace number 3. Also signed off by TC, but this one was all the way back in 2016. Now, this is a great photo right here. So this is number 1. You can tell by the smaller inlay. Then this is when they moved on to CNC production. I definitely prefer it when it's done by hand. It just ended up looking a bit flat, I guess you could say, when it was mass produced. And then you can see what it looks like in his modern stylings. But this one was offered at the same $15,000, had a price cut to $12,900. As of today, nothing is left in his shop, and I only know of where 2 of those 3 guitars went. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at a very iconic guitar today, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.